Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, what does the future hold for two of the greatest quarterbacks to grace the NFL field? The New York Giants find their general manager, and more questions around Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints. What's going on in the Big Easy? We got all that and more for you on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every single day. It's Tuesday. That means you got me, Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL. I do Locked On Vikings, and we have Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson NOLA. He does Locked On Saints. And today we get to laugh at the misfortunes of our division rivals. Among some other things, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. We got Joe Shoen is the new GM in New York. We're going to talk about that. And of course, you got to tell me what's going on with Sean Payton, but we'll save that for last because I'm excited to hear about that. I have no idea what's going on there, but let's start.
Me too.
I'm gonna let's start with something else fun for Saints fans, which is, so we have gotten some interesting cryptic comments from veteran, longtime, twilight of their career quarterbacks in Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Let's do Tom Brady first. Tell me what's going on there.
Okay, so according to reports, Tom Brady at this moment, after being eliminated in the division round by, or in their recent matchup there, the quarterback is looking at potentially sort of stepping away for a moment as the season ends, taking a month or longer to, quote, assess the way that he feels physically and mentally while also gauging his family's desires. So this feels eerily Drew Breesy to me, right? Somebody that covered Drew Brees out of his playing days and into his retirement, talking a little bit more about like, okay, what does the family need from me? Things like that. On another podcast, Tom Brady also talked about how he, it pains his wife to see him getting hit and how he needs to make sure that he's there for his family and all of that. And I know, David Harrison, James Yarko, Locked On Bucks, they're going to be talking about this all, throughout this next month or two up until free agency. But here, as we look at it from this point on January, 25th, it looks like Tom Brady is, for better or for worse, contemplating not just whether or not he's going to be in Tampa Bay next season, but potentially finally hanging it up.
Yeah. And so what happens to Tampa Bay? Like, how is Tampa Bay going to assess this? Because if he goes, that's terrible. If he stays, you have to try to pull the band back together for one last run. Can they even do that?
Yeah, the nice thing here is that they have built up a pretty nice contract for Tom Brady kind of with this in mind, unlike another situation that we'll discuss here in a little bit. But if Tom Brady does retire, very likely they'd push it into what is a post-June 1 transaction so that it gets pushed towards like the end of the league year and then it kind of spreads things out over a couple of seasons as opposed to things fully accelerating in terms of dead money and cap hit and things like that into the future. And so with that being the case, they would save somewhere around, I believe it's like $12 million or so $12.2 million that they would end up saving, which would go into the sort of pot of around $20 million that they already have. So it would put them in a position, if Tom Brady retired, to be able to go after some of those other free agents, those outgoing unrestricted free agents that they have, like Ryan Jensen and Jason Pierre-Paul and Chris Godwin and Jordan Whitehead and Carlton Davis and Alex Kappa, and the list goes on. But if he stays, then they really start to hang around that $20 million area and then just sort of have to figure things out from there. Do you franchise tag Chris Godwin? Because if so, it's a $19 million franchise tag there at that wide receiver position. That's your salary that you have available with only 35 players currently on the roster for next year. So it's challenging if they stick around, but it's doable, and it's in a better situation than, let's say, what's going on with the Green Bay Packers, for instance, over in the NFC North.
Is it time for me to hurt Packers fans?
Can
I harm them?
Hurt Packers fans, yes. I think it's time.
All right, so here's the deal. Aaron Rodgers is going through the same thing, right? He's 38. He's going through, am I going to play again? Am I not going to play again? a lot of questions after the loss to San Francisco. What are you going to do? Are you coming back? Blah, blah, blah. He kind of declined to answer. He said, I'm really emotional right now. I'm not going to make that decision while I'm super emotional. But he did mention a couple things that are important. He doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, right? And, the Packers, if he's going to stay, the Packers have to, he's only going to stay if the Packers are trying to put another run together. He's not going to sit there and bridge over to Jordan Love and have some crappy year at the end. Like, he doesn't want to go out like Ben Roethlisberger did. Nobody does. But so there's all that. But where it loses me is I don't know how the Packers do that. Wherever Aaron Rodgers' head is, if he wants to be in Green Bay, if he doesn't, if he even wants to play anymore, far be it for me to speculate on that. But if you look at the cap situation, they have been pushing this can down the road for years. And they have accumulated, currently they have in 2022, $19 million in prorated bonus on Aaron Rodgers. That is unmovable money. You can cut him, trade him, he can retire. You can't get out of that money unless you take it to arbitration and make him pay it back. But you're not getting that back. So that leaves them in this really tough spot. They're $40 million over the cap. They currently have 42 players under contract. Devontae Adams is not one of them. Yeah. And if you want to keep Devontae Adams, that's going to be expensive. You're going to have to franchise tag him. You're going to have to or sign him to a big extension. But he's not going to sign a big extension when he knows that Aaron Rodgers is only going to be down for a year. So you might have to franchise tag him. That's a $19 million cost. So make it $59 million in the hole with 43 players under contract. That's really scary.
Yeah.
And so before the show, Ross, you and I were trying to figure out, we were going through the cap calculator on Over the Cap, trying to figure out Green Bay. And we figured out a plan where Aaron Rodgers returns, you tag Devontae Adams, you do a bunch of irresponsible restructures and extensions, you extend Jair Alexander, you add some void years, you manipulate David Bakhtiari's contract. Yeah, Zadarius Smith. You manipulate Bakhtiari's contract in a way that is very irresponsible. And even then, you're cutting guys like Preston Smith, Dean Lowry, Mason Crosby, you need a new kicker, Randall Cobb, Mercedes Lewis, Billy Turner. And listen to the list of outgoing free agents in addition to Devontae Adams, people that will be free agents this coming March. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Whitney Merciless, Rasul Douglas, Lucas Patrick, Alan Lazard, Tyler Lancaster, Chris Barnes, Equinemius St. Brown, even Oren Burks. Like, it's the whole team.
You know what stresses me out about that list? The problem before all of this, when whole conversation around Aaron Rodgers potentially retiring and all that from, earlier this season and all of that came from not having weapons on the offensive side. I just heard you name every wide receiver that's not Devontae Adams, basically, on that outgoing free agent list.
And maybe that's fine. Like, the problem was that those guys weren't good enough, but now you don't even have a warm body. Right. What are you going to do? And you have no money. Like, the plan that I came up with puts them a cool $2.2 million in the black. They are now cap compliant and will be able to participate in the 2022 season. But they go down to 36 players under contract. They have to build a whole 90-man roster, sign a draft class. They have more work than that to do. It is going to be really, really hard for the Packers to put this all together without significantly making them worse. And I don't know. I challenge Packers fans as a Vikings fan. Prove me wrong. Dunk on me. Show me a plan where the Packers go back in 2022, Aaron Rodgers comes back, Devontae Adams comes back, and the Packers are not significantly worse than they were in 2021, where they didn't make it past the divisional round. Show me that plan, and I'll shut up.
We're talking about how the Bucs might be a little bit tight on cash. The Green Bay Packers might be out of money. If you're looking for a way to make yourselves some money, the greatest, fastest, easiest place to get that done is over at betonline.ag. The best place to go to place all of your bets. You've got the divisional round coming up, AFC Championship game, NFC Championship game. The rounds are set. You've got the showdown in California between the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. That's going to be a ton of fun. But before that, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, first AFC Championship game since 1988. Pretty incredible stuff. They're going to be taking on, of course, those Kansas City Chiefs. Who you got in the Super Bowl? Go in there, winning that. Go ahead and place some money on it. Have some fun and get in on the action. And betonline.ag is the best place to get it done. Don't forget to use the promo code, though, Locked On, LOCKEDON, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On over at BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thanks so much again for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. By the way, go check out Peacock and Williamson. Start getting yourself in the habit of listening to that every day because they're going to the Super Bowl. And that is going to be so cool. Can't miss. Make sure you check that out all week. They're going to be at the Super Bowl, giving you awesome content covering the NFL. Let's talk about somebody who won't be in the Super Bowl, the New York Giants. I think I have...
Much to all of our shock,
Yeah.
We're all...
Who had that in the beginning? So I think I've said on this show before that there is no team in the NFL in a darker place than the New York Giants. They haven't won more than 6 games since 2016. They've gone through like 3 head coaches. They're in the middle of a quarterback quagmire. Like, it's a bad spot.
Yeah.
But they opened a window and the sun is shining in. Maybe there's hope, light at the end of the tunnel, because they bring in Joe Shoen to be the GM, replacing Dave Gettleman, who retired, probably was getting fired anyways. And maybe they turn this around. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it's a good hire for them. It puts them in a position to where they're able to start to build. Now, I love that they were, figuring out everything at GM before they started to figure out everything at head coach. We were kind of curious about that weeks ago here on our Tuesday episodes of Locked On NFL about whether or not they were going to hang on to Joe Judge and let the new GM make that decision or whatever that might be. But now they've sort of moved on from all of that. But look, I think when you think about what it is that GMs do that are most important in terms of managing the team building aspects of, the vision, the personnel, everything that they sort of have their fingers in. I mean, some GMs do a little bit more than just standard GM-y stuff, right? They're a part of the facilities upgrades and training room upgrades and things like that. But just down to the bare sort of core of things, you look at what it is that Dave Gettleman did over the course of his tenure, particularly toward the end of his tenure, drafting a running back within the top, 5 or so, like really, really kind of over investing in the trenches, passing up on opportunities. But then in 2021, really actually did something to where they, put together this offense around Daniel Jones that should have been able to work, but you never solved the quarterback problem because you were stuck with Daniel Jones. There was just a lot of lack of trust in Dave Gettleman, which makes a ton of sense. Is Joe Shoen the person that can come in now and sort of help to rebound the New York Giants after everything that they went through with David Gettleman and all of the other decision makers that maybe weren't in the best position over the course of the past few years?
Yeah, so because my Vikings are in the same spot looking for a GM, I did a little bit of work on Joe Shoen before the Vikings announced their interview list. He wasn't on it, and then I kind of let it go. So for real analysis, go to Patricia Traina at Locked On Giants. But here's what I can tell you. He is Brandon Beane Part 2. He's been Brandon Beane's right-hand man for a while, and the Bills are a model organization. I know Bills fans are hurting right now, but you guys are a model organization. This is how everybody is going to try to structure their rebuild after the way the Bills did it. Come in 2017, be at least respectable, aggressively get the quarterback that you want, and build around him. That's going to be the formula, and I think it should be. So go get a guy that was there. And I like that. There is probably going to be a much bigger focus on analytics, whereas Dave Gettleman kind of became the face of anti-analytics because of his little keyboard gaffe. Yeah. That, like, you could not have gone a more opposite direction than Dave Gettleman. And considering, like I said, Dave Gettleman put your franchise in the worst place of all of them, at least in my opinion, that maybe going the opposite way from that is good. Like, let's turn that ship around maybe and go back. So that's where I'm at. And for more specific information on what he did in the Bills with the Bills and stuff, or quotes and all that stuff, go to P-Train. But from what I understand, I think he's the salve. Like, he's a really good fit for the problems the Giants have had. And if anybody's going to turn the boat around, it's somebody who's going to be willing to do the U-turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And now you're in a position to where you can start to sort of build around with this new vision. The biggest thing is going to be patience. It's not going to be a 1 year turnaround for this team. Exactly. And so the patience has to be there from ownership, from everybody, from the players that are going to be in the facility, all of that. It's not all going to turn around in 2022. You might have a better season in 2022, all of that. Don't get me wrong. But you're not going to all of a sudden become a Super Bowl contender in that time. At least it's not very likely. And so I think when you bring in a GM like Joe Shoen, who's sort of walked the path of the slow build, right? Sort of the long game of 2017's draft class, and then building around that, bringing in guys like Gabriel Davis, bringing in guys like Stephon Diggs, bringing in, via trade, bringing in guys
aggressive
like
where
Emmanuel
you have
Sanders.
to be.
Yeah. And building around as you were learning where those stepping stones were and where the next stepping stone was going to be. You have to have that patience. And I think Shane does a really good job, or has shown that he comes from an organization and comes from sort of a tree, if you will, a general management tree that's willing to designate that time and commit that time.
There's a healthy process in place in Buffalo. And if you can put a healthy process in place in New York, the wins will come, the hits will come, but you have to have a healthy process.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next question is going to be, who's going to be the head coach? Do they go after one of the coordinators there, right? Do they bring in somebody from Buffalo, a Brian Dable, a Leslie Frazier? Like, do they bring in those guys and then really,
or maybe
really
make
start
a trade
to continue to do that, or make a trade? Absolutely.
For somebody that perhaps would be cast as Kevin James in a movie.
Well, I'll tell you what. He won't be cast as Kevin James, but unfortunately, Kevin James is cast as him. Though I would very much watch a movie of Sean Payton cast as Kevin
backwards.
James. Let's go ahead and flip that and give me that film, because I'll watch that in a heartbeat. Here's what I can tell you.
Sitcom dad Sean Payton.
Right. Here's what I can tell
Murdered
you
by
right
Annie
now.
Murphy.
Love some Eddie Murphy. Here's what I can tell you right now. It's New Orleans or nowhere for Sean Payton. Let's talk about that and what that means for not only the New Orleans Saints, but the Chicago Bears, the Dallas Cowboys, and all of those delusional fans as well, as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL. And I'll tell you what, there is one thing that is not at all uncertain, and it is the benefit of the Get Upside app, my favorite app that I own. Luke, I know you use it as well. There's no reason not to use it. It's very, very simple, because we have listeners right now that are earning cash back based on every gallon of gas every time that they fill up. And all you have to do to be a part of that is download the Get Upside app from your App Store or Google Play right now. And when you download it, don't forget to use the promo code TOUCHDOWN so you can get 25 cents back or more per gallon onto your first fill up. Really, really awesome stuff. Don't pay full at the pump anymore. Get cash back with the Get Upside app. Just download the app from your Google Play Store, App Store, whatever it is that you use. And again, don't forget that promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents back per gallon or more on your first tank. There are a lot of people that are driving a ton right now. Gas prices are ridiculously high. You don't want to have to go through and do all that. So go ahead and save yourself some money with no catch and get cash back added right to your account that you can pull out at any time. You can have it deposited directly to your bank account. You can do it through PayPal. I use Amazon gift cards because I'm always trying to upgrade everything you see around me or what you hear me on, all of that, trying to make sure all that stays up to date. So I absolutely love it. So once again, go ahead and grab it. It's the Get Upside app. Don't forget the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents back per gallon or more over on the Get Upside app. That's with your first tank. And once again, that is promo code TOUCHDOWN.
Ross.
Me.
I don't need to set this up. Sean Payton's saying some weird stuff. What's going on?
Well, here's the tricky part. Sean Payton hasn't said anything.
People are saying weird stuff about Sean. See, that's how little I know about this. I saw Sean Payton trending, and I was like, oh, we're recording Locked On NFL. I'm not going to look up a thing about this and just let Ross explain it to me.
Great.
So hit me.
Let me fill you in.
Tell me a story.
I'll fill you in, and I'll fill you in, right? So, okay, here's how this goes. Right now, Sean Payton has not committed to returning as New Orleans Saints head coach in 2022. Now, Luke, I don't know about you, but when I finish recording an episode of Locked On Saints, for instance, and I publish it, I don't call David Locke, president and founder of Locked On, and say, hey, David, I'll be back for tomorrow's episode, right? It's just kind of understood, right? So I don't blame...
I do.
Sean, you call him every night. Hey, just so you know, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm sure he appreciates it. But I think that might be over-delivering a little bit. But when it comes to Sean Payton, he basically finished the season and then went on vacation, right? And honestly, who can blame him? Who can blame him? He usually
everybody does that.
The thing is that usually you do kind of like an end of a postseason press conference to kind of wrap everything up, put a bow on it, talk about how you plan to be competitive next season and all these other things. Sean Payton didn't do any of that. He said, going on vacation. He's been in Cabo. And he returned to the New Orleans Saints facility for the first time on Monday of this week on the 24th. with that, Gayle Benson, the owner of the New Orleans Saints, who was, doing another, appearance for something else, kind of mentioned that, well, we don't know what's going on with Sean Payton, and there's a lot of rumors floating around and everything, but I'm sure that he'll let us know sooner rather than later. So that was kind of
is he missing? Do we know?
No, he's not missing.
Call the police?
No, he was back at the facility on Monday.
Oh,
but
okay.
In terms of just like everyone is kind of expecting him to just kind of come out and say, hey, I'm going to be the head coach next year. Well, that's kind of where everything was. But then stuff got real, Luke. And here's where things got real.
Uh-oh.
Jay Glazer is a very, very good friend of Sean Payton's. What you hear from Jay Glazer about Sean Payton is usually coming from Sean Payton, or at least it is on the utmost reliable source at that point.
Like well documented that they know each other and talk all the time.
Absolutely. And so Jay Glazer went on with our friends who are partners with us here at Locked On, our friends over at Odyssey at 105.3 in Dallas, because Dallas fans still think that Sean Payton could possibly be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, I thought this was a Chicago dream now.
It's not happening. It also is a Chicago dream. Lauren Cox, Locked On Bears, he talked about it. It's not happening. But I will tell you what could potentially happen. Sorry, y'all. It's not happening. But I'll tell you what could potentially happen. Apparently, according to Jay Glazer, apparently Sean Payton is just kind of changing his mind like every 2 to 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to stay. I'm going to go. I'm going to do whatever. So now what's happening and kind of where we are at this time, let's catch everybody up. There is still the question about whether or not Sean Payton will be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints next season. There's going to be a meeting between Sean Payton and Gayle Benson, the owner of the New Orleans Saints. Very likely some others can be involved in that as well. I wouldn't be surprised. Mickey Loomis, general manager, the president of the organization, all of that. And we should have clarity about this sometime this week. That meeting is said to happen early this week, is what Jay Glazer said. So we'll see how it all goes. But there is a chance that Sean Payton does not return as the New Orleans Saints head coach in 2022. And the sort of options here in terms of what could happen with Sean Payton is that either he is the coach of the New Orleans Saints in 2022, or he looks at either a mini retirement or full-on retiring this offseason. So, just that.
So I'll let you process that in your own time. But I have a question. 2019. So since the infamous PI no call with the Rams in 2018, next year, wild card exit in a home game. Year after that, divisional exit in a home game. The year after that, they don't even make the playoffs.
Right.
You sure you want Sean Payton back?
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
Even though it kind of feels like he went with as Drew Brees declined, the Saints declined, and now Drew Brees is gone and the Saints are gone.
But is that
true? Sure?
But is that true?
I'm asking you.
Is that true? Well, that's my thing. I don't think that that's true, because Sean Payton also won 5 games in a row with Teddy Bridgewater. He won 3 or 4 games with Taysom Hill. Helped both of those teams go to the playoffs with a declining Drew Brees during that time. And then in 2021, in a season where they dealt with a hurricane that displaced them for 21 days, they had to play their first home game in Jacksonville, Florida. They started 4 different quarterbacks, had 6 different starting offensive tackles, had 5 different kickers, had a game where they played with like 10 defensive starters out, 4 offensive starters out. Somehow still, and then even had a game to where he wasn't able to coach, in which the team shut out the reigning Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers 9-0. Just a reminder, Buccaneers fans, about that one. But you're in a situation here to where you say
it's not safe for Bucs or Packers.
I know, right? You're in a place here to where you say 9-8 for that team in 2021 was overperforming based upon maybe second to the Las Vegas Raiders, the team that went through the absolute most in 2021. And so the big thing here, and this is going to be my big takeaway over at Locked On Saints, you can hear more about this over there, is at what point does the New Orleans Saints organization run out of things to keep New Orleans Saints fans believing in this franchise? And is that moment where the hope goes away, does that correlate with losing Sean Payton and potentially other members of the coaching staff who could also potentially exit after Sean Payton leaves? It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
One final follow-up on that. Is Taysom Hill one of those hope-inducing things?
It's an interesting thing. I don't know, because one of the biggest sort of spearheads around the idea that Taysom Hill could be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints was Sean Payton. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much of the organizational value in Taysom Hill was tied to Sean Payton, and then how much of it dissipates if he leaves, right? Or does going out and pursuing a starting quarterback like a Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, right, trying to make the big trade to swing a starting, franchise quarterback back to New Orleans, does that end up becoming a bargaining chip to keep Sean Payton in the building? Those are going to be the things that I'm really going to be watching over the course of this. How far does this organization have to go? How far are they willing to go to convince Sean Payton, hey, I know 2021 was exhausting. I know 2021 was rough, but we can make 2022 much, much brighter with this approach. Will you stay?
I can't wait. There's so much turmoil in the NFC. The NFC could be piss poor. And you can be you just need to be fine, and you could end up going 12-5 and winning the conference.
It's turmoil. It's turmoil. It's chaos. It is insanity. It's all of it. And it's Locked on NFL. We're very glad to have been able to be here with you today, and thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back with you tomorrow as we wrap this up. James and Tony are going to be there for you, making sure that you have everything that you need to know around more of these stories as they develop, and much more going on around the NFL, so don't miss that. And as always, we appreciate you, Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, daily host of Locked on Vikings, myself, Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, daily host of Locked on Saints. We thank you very much for making Locked on NFL your first listen of the day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked on Bets. Your boy Q, handicapping expert Lee Sterling, getting you all that betting news, information, and analysis that you need. And we will see you here very soon for another episode of Locked on NFL, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.